Thank you for joining us today. This is everything you always wanted to know about flood insurance, but we're afraid to ask. And we're going to do it in about 30 minutes, give or take a few. A lot depends on how many questions we have at the end, but the presentation part of it will be about 30 minutes. I'm Jason Harris. I'm the CEO of CartoFront, and I will be joined by Mike Toffoli, who's the president of Acadian Insurance. But these are the two important people for you to remember. Edna Hernandez, say hello, Edna.
Hello, everyone.
Who's with CartoFront. She's our customer success manager. And then Carrie Lyman is vice president of Acadian Insurance, our local Florida licensed insurance agency. We're right here every Tuesday at noon. And then the last Tuesday of each month is in Spanish. The next one in Spanish will be 3 weeks from today on May 25th. So please make note of that. And we really have two goals today. The first is the most important. It's to help you be the most knowledgeable, confident, and profitable realtor in your market. We know that flood insurance can be very confusing, time-consuming, and in the worst scenario, really limit options when you're working with your clients. And we want to just put you in a position to win. And then specifically for today, the goal is, this is interactive, so please feel free to use the chat function to communicate questions that you have or comments. Here are the chapters of our book. We'll be going through each one of these in detail today, and then leave time for you at the end for a Q&A. And then we have an at-home version of this. So while we have hard copies of this, here's a copy of the hard copy in English and in Spanish. The important thing is Edna's going to share this with you electronically so that you have it as a resource and a tool for yourself as you go forward. Everything we cover will be in this ebook. Okay. Let me start with the South Florida flood risk. This is why CartoFront is in business. We are here to help realtors like yourself all across the country tackle that there's a national concern about growing flood. And when you look at this map, you realize not only is it in our South Florida market, it's all over the country now in places that we never thought about it. Like look at the Appalachians, look at the Pacific Northwest. These are areas that are now experiencing flooding all throughout the year. And when we look specifically at our market, about 1 in every 3 properties are at medium to high risk for flood. And you can see that all across the Tri-County area and into the western part of the southern part of the state. And we all lived through last year's flood season and hurricane season, and it was the most active on record with 30 named storms. And when you really look at it from a color coding point of view, Louisiana took the brunt of it last year. South Florida had about half as much time in the direct path of a hurricane or hurricanes. And we're now starting to see the impact, although we're in a slightly different market than when this report came out, we're starting to see climate change impact the value of properties. And again, we're in a little bit of a bubble in the moment because of COVID and that there's no property, there's really low inventory. Yet this is something to keep an eye on that, Bal Harbour saw a loss of property pricing from 2016 to 2020, pre-COVID. An important thing we'll be talking about today is that FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program is instituting Risk Rating 2.0. Mike will talk more about this when we get into the insurance part. This is taking effect for all new policies as of October 1st of this year, and for all renewals starting April 1st of 2022. This is what we believe it's going to mean for the state of Florida. This is FEMA's own information. 20% of all policies will see decrease in pricing. 80% will see increases. And you see the numbers here on the bottom in this bar. A couple of different sources came out with their hurricane projections for this coming season, which kicks off in about 3 weeks. Although over the last couple of years, storms have started as early May, so we can see them at any point. This is from AccuWeather, pretty reliable source. They're projecting out 7 to 10 hurricanes, with 3 to 5 of them being major impacts on the U.S. As you know, not just flood insurance is challenging, but the entire insurance landscape in South Florida is very challenging. Another one of the benefits of CartoFront is to help connect you with directional flood insurance pricing that we believe is affordable and realistic. Again, Mike will talk a little bit about that when we get into it. We really want to put you in a position to win, and that's throughout the process. Whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, we see our platform helping you up front in the assessment period, at those moments when you're negotiating an offer and getting a contract, and then making your life and your home buyer's life smooth from contract closing. While I click on the demo button here, our little raindrop, if you can just let us know in the chat function if you've already used our service since we started in mid-February. So that would be great to know that. Okay, so now I'm going to go and do a demo for you. Can everybody see my screen? We're now on Miami's login page. Okay.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great, thanks, Ed. All right, so we're going to log into CoreLogic. We're embedded within each and every listing, and so you can come in through any one of the different pathways to see the listings. We're going to click here for new. I'm going to sort this so I can look at the properties. And I'm going to choose this one right here. This is A11 030131. Okay, so our little CartoFront raindrops right here on the nav bar, right, with all the other applications. And this is in Miami. It's on Southwest 100th Avenue. I'm going to click on this and request information. So we're now live. We're taking the data from the listing, we're cleaning it, sending it off to the government, sending it off to National General, who's a private flood insurance carrier. And it's now reporting back the information. And this is a good quote for us to talk about today, Mike, as we go through. So there's a couple of key areas that we like to point out when you get this information back. The first is about the property itself. We want to make sure you as the realtor are getting the right information that you requested. So we have the MLS ID, the address, and then right off the bat, we're providing what flood zone it's on. So here it's saying it's flood zone X. And for more information, it gives you a little bit more context as you do what we call a hover over. So zone X is moderate risk. Flood insurance is not required for lenders, yet it's something to be further researched and recommended in that research. In the middle part here is then some directional information about flood insurance coverage. On the right-hand column is the government, and it's with their standard approach, which is $250,000 as the property value, the high end, $100,000 for the property contents, their deductible, and then you see additional coverage. Mike will talk a little bit more about this when we get into the insurance piece. They're pricing it at $572. On the private side, again, this is Beyond Floods, who's the product provided by National General. National General is an A-minus insurance carrier. They're part of the Allstate family now, and they're viewing this risk as very low cost, right? So apples to apples, $300 versus $572. And so that's from 250 and 100, apples to apples between the government and their base level. Their enhanced version actually goes all the way up to 1.5 million in replacement cost. And so I think the property was at 4.25. So we're showing what the stair step would be of greater coverage. Even that is a great deal at 392. Each and every quote requested has its own quote ID. And then we've got a disclaimer here to protect you, the realtor, who is not licensed in insurance, or most of you are not, as well as us, the technology company, to show that these are directional quotes and need a licensed insurance agent like Mike and his Acadian Insurance to be able to bind this. The third area of this view is around communication. I want to point out that everything is bilingual. So by toggling to Espanol, everything here now turns into Spanish all throughout the system. And then you as the realtor can share it 3 different ways. You can click on this and get a private link. You can drop that into an email, drop it into a text. You can print it out as a PDF. So if you're doing a tour or you're having an open house, this is what that would look like, right? So here's what it looks like. We pre-populate your name and your email here. And again, everything's represented by Mike's Acadian Insurance, who's our local provider of service and binding. And then the third way you can communicate is via email. We ask that you add your client's information. Once you've done that, their name appears in a drop-down box. Once you collect that, and you can send it off via email. And then on the back end, let me hit, here's what the quote looks like. This is what your client would see once you send an email to them. Powered by CartoFront, Acadian Insurance, who's representing now the offer, directional offer. Your client then can get a private link right back into the system, or if they choose, they can set up time with Mike's Acadian Insurance by clicking schedule conversation and set up time at their convenience. Let's say Friday at 9 a.m. and there it is.
Jason, before you go back to the presentation, we're being asked if you can show again how you got to the quotes page, to the platform.
Sure. Okay, great. Thanks for that question. So, CoreLogic matrix. So you get to the dashboard, the Clarity dashboard. Any of the market watches. So let's say, on this one, let's say price decrease. And then pick single family home here. Let's say this one here. And right here in the navigation bar is our little raindrop, and you request here. So hopefully that answered the question. All of this, by the way, is contained within Matrix. So you can take multiple quotes if you'd like to, and send them to your clients or retain them for yourself by just taking the link. Let me show this, sharing this link here. So if you take this link, copy it and put it on like on an email to yourself, then you'll always be able to get right back into this quote, which is quote 3496. Ed, any other questions at the moment?
We do have other questions. Do you want to address them now or at the end of the?
If it's around this application, yes. If not, then we'll go to Mike, and Mike can go through his presentation and pick up all the questions.
So for example, we have a question of how accurate the annual cost estimate is and if Acadian is the only agent listed.
Okay. So let's pick up on both those in the next section then.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And thanks for everybody's questions and thanks for everyone's patience on that. All right, so to keep everybody on their toes, we've got a little chapter quiz here. In South Florida, what percentage of properties are at risk of flood? Okay, if you can put this into the chat box, I'll do the Jeopardy theme song. Da na 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 na. Bum ba bum 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 bum. Okay, fingers off the keyboards, and the answer is 33%, 1 in 3. Okay, Mike, you're up.
Okay.
Welcome, Mike, to Foley.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to spend a few minutes going through some of the terms associated with flood insurance, as well as some of the coverages, what it covers, what it doesn't cover. I've seen some of the questions coming through on the chat. I think we'll probably address a lot of those in the course of this. I want to start with what is an actual flood? How is it defined for insurance purposes? A flood is defined as an excess of water on land that is normally dry that affects 2 or more acres of land or 2 or more properties. So it's an actual, most people feel like they know a flood when they see it, but there actually is a definition, and this is it. Now, floods are caused by thunderstorms, hurricanes, snow melting, and water backup from drainage systems such as dams and levees. What isn't considered a flood is an internal pipe break or a hole in the roof because of maybe a tree fell on it because of the wind, broken windows because of wind and water gets in. Those are not considered flood. That's not considered flood damage. But that is probably covered by your homeowner's insurance policy. Flood insurance is a separate policy from homeowner's insurance. So kind of piggybacking off of that last slide, you have to, in order to be covered for flood, you have to buy a separate policy. It's not included in your homeowner's insurance. It's an important distinction that a lot of people miss. Flood zones, you hear about that a lot, how whether something's in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. Actually, every property is in a flood zone. It's a matter of how high the risk exists, how high the risk is of a flood occurring in that zone. Flood zones are determined by the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, that is managed by FEMA. Okay, so here are some of the zones. Flood zone risks in, for example, an X zone. X zone is considered a fairly low risk, moderate to low risk of flood. That's where a lot of people will assume if it's in an X zone, they'll say, well, it's not in a flood zone. And that's because of often what it has to do with is whether the property is going to be financed. And insurance companies, mortgage companies generally do not require flood insurance if something is in an X zone. Now, even though it's considered to be of moderate to low risk, it's important to recognize that 25 to 30% of all flood insurance claims paid every year are in these less hazardous areas, the X zones. So what will also show is that X zones tend to have the lowest cost associated with them because of the low risk. So it might still be a very good investment, given that 25 to 30% of claims paid are in these X zones. The higher risk areas have prefixes starting with A or V. The A zones are properties that are inland and are high risk of flood. The ones that have a V prefix are closer to tidal water, coastal areas. All of these are high risk of flood, and generally, if a property is in one of these zones, the lender will require flood insurance. Okay, so true or false? Another quiz question. Flood insurance is part of homeowners insurance. The answer is false. It's a separate policy that needs to be purchased separately from a qualified insurance agent. Okay, options. What kind of flood insurance is available out there? Well, there's actually some choices now. In the past, there weren't. It was what's always been out there is the National Flood Insurance Program. That's managed by FEMA, which is part of the federal government. But now there are privately held insurance companies that are offering flood insurance as well. Our platform, the CartoFront platform, offers quotes from both the National Flood Insurance Program and a private carrier, Beyond Floods, which is underwritten by National General Insurance, as Jason mentioned, it's a subsidiary of Allstate and rated A- by AM Best. Now, how do the two differ in terms of the federal government program, the National Flood Insurance Program, and the private market, specifically Beyond Floods? The National Flood Insurance Program is actually administered through insurance companies, but the federal government is really who is behind it. They set the pricing. They basically are, the claims are paid out of funds of the federal government, basically taxpayer funds. Private markets, private companies pay the claims themselves, and they come up with their own pricing. They examine the risk, they price the risk, and if you have a claim, the money will come out of their funds. Mentioned pricing, so we kind of jumped ahead a little bit there. The NFIP rates currently are based on what flood zone they're in, and if they're within a certain flood zone, the pricing is uniform throughout that flood zone. In the private market, every parcel is looked at individually. The focus is on the latitude and longitude and the elevation of that specific property, how high up the ground is. Now, what's interesting about this is the model that the private markets have been using for a few years now. And as Jason mentioned, the federal government, the NFIP program, is actually going to something very similar to this starting in October of this year. What kinds of limits of insurance? How much insurance is available through the different products? Well, the National Flood Insurance Program only offers up to $250,000 worth of coverage for the building itself and $100,000 for the personal property and contents within that building or home. Beyond Floods, on the other hand, offers up to $1.5 million for the building and up to 50% of that for the building coverage for personal property, so the stuff that's inside. Deductibles, again, only one option for National Flood Insurance, $1,250 for the building and another $1,250 for personal property inside of it. Beyond Floods offers a deductible anywhere between $1,000 and $10,000, a bunch of different options in between there. Obviously, the lower the deductible, the higher the premium. The higher the deductible, the lower the premium. And that's for both building and personal property. What kind of optional coverages are available? National Flood Insurance Program really doesn't have any optional coverages, but Beyond Floods offers loss of use. What that is in the event that your house is flooded or a home is flooded and you can't live in it and you need to spend money to stay somewhere else because you can't live there, or you're losing rents if it's a rental property, this coverage is available on an optional basis through Beyond Floods. Additionally, if you have other buildings on the property, like a detached garage, that you can get coverage for that from Beyond Floods. There isn't coverage on a single policy from the National Flood Insurance Program, although you could buy a second policy for the other buildings on the property. Timing. Unless coverage is required by a lender, you will have to wait 30 days before coverage can take effect so, you know, this is set up in a way so that people, if they see a storm coming, they can't just go out and buy a flood policy. You know, if it is required by a lender, though, it can be implemented immediately or at closing. Beyond Floods doesn't require as long of a waiting period. It's 5 days, but the same conditions. If it's required by the lender, there's the 5-day waiting period is waived. Otherwise, you have to wait 5 days for coverage to take effect. These are some general rules about which product is best for what types of properties. The highest risk properties tend to be able to find a better price for the coverage through the National Flood Insurance Program. The low to medium risk properties, you'll generally find that Beyond Floods or the private market will do better. And I think we saw that in the example that Jason went through, where it was, you know, $300 for the same coverage from Beyond Floods that was over $500 for the National Flood Insurance Program.
And Mike, quick question for you. So in these low to medium risk areas, right, which are getting like a quarter of the claims, what's realistic to expect for peace of mind policies? I mean, is it $600, $800, less than 1,000? I mean, what help maybe the realtors?
Generally speaking, I think, you know, I would look at, you know, what we're seeing in the National Flood Insurance Program, which is in, you know, $500 to $600 range. You know, and that's, you know, not a lot of money over the course of 12 months. So, you know, it really is a good investment to protect yourself. It's you know, you've got homeowners insurance that protects you against so many other things, but flood is so prevalent in South Florida, and a lot of people don't really think to purchase that coverage. And, you know, $600 a month, $600 a year is, you know, roughly $50 a month.
Right. And the average claim's like what, $20,000 or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's significant. So, you know, I mean, even if it just, you know, covers the floors, you know, a couple of inches of water on the floors of your home, carpeting, baseboards, drywall, all that stuff gets damaged, and that can add up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Another quiz question, true or false, Beyond Floods is a private flood insurance option? True. Beyond Floods is offered by National General Insurance, which is a private insurance company, and is available on the CartoFront platform. Okay, let's get into coverage and claims payments, how that works. Okay, flood insurance is broken down into 2 segments, the building coverage and the property coverage. Generally speaking, what's included in the building coverage is the structure itself, anything that is permanently attached to it, you know, like paneling, wall boards, built-in appliances, furnaces, water heaters, central air, things of that nature. And then whatever it costs, if any of that stuff is damaged, whatever it costs to clean it up and haul the debris away. Contents is stuff that you can pick up and take with you. Things, portable appliances, washers and dryers, some freezers, valuable items such as artwork, although there are limits on how much is covered, how much coverage exists for that, personal belongings, clothing, etc. What isn't covered is damage caused, as we mentioned this earlier, by moisture, mildew, or mold that's not related to or caused by a flood. Like if you have a pipe leak and it, you know, perhaps it's a small leak or a slow leak and it accumulates inside the walls, wouldn't be covered by flood insurance, but most likely would be somewhat covered by your homeowner's insurance policy. Other things that aren't covered are, you know, cash, currency, precious metals, valuable papers, things outside of the property, like, you know, walks, decks, patios, seawalls, hot tubs, swimming pools. If your business has some issues as a result of the flood, these are really personal property policies that we're talking about. So business losses would not be covered. And of course, any landscaping or exterior features are also not covered. Now, if you have a claim, how does the insurance company or the National Flood Insurance Program calculate what you're going to get paid? Well, there's two bases. The most prevalent is replacement cost. And that's pretty self-explanatory. It's the cost to repair or replace property that's been damaged by the flood. Now, if the property is your primary residence, both the building and the contents will be covered for their replacement cost value. However, if the property is not your primary residence, if it's a tenant occupied property, the contents will be covered at what's called actual cash value. And what that means is it's the depreciated cost of the things that have been damaged. It's similar in concept to if you get into an auto accident and your car is 3 or 4 years old, they're not going to give you enough to buy a new car. They'll give you what the value of the car was at the time the accident took place.
Mike, thank you so much. We're going to turn it over to questions in a moment, but let me first point out some flood insurance resources for you. Edna's already shared this with you. Feel free to pass that link along in English and Spanish to your clients. We are very thrilled. Basically, again, we've bundled this whole presentation into this really easy to read e-booklet. If you like what you've seen today, we offer these for sales meetings for your brokerages. So if you want to bring this information to your broker, please do. Edna, if you can send along the calendar, that's another way you can do it. Just get on our calendar. We do it in 3 different options. 5 minutes is kind of like a quick advertisement. We know that those sales meetings are got a lot on the agenda, so even 5 minutes to share our resources and a couple of headlines. We can do it in 15 minutes, which is a bit of a consolidation of what you just saw, or the full presentation, which you've just gone through, 25 minutes. We are on the Miami Realtors landing page, miamirealtors.com/CartoFront. Everything that you've seen is located in one nice place in English and in Spanish. Here are some direct links. FEMA, there's some really interesting stuff that FEMA has out right now regarding Risk Rating 2.0. Edna will send a thank you email at the end of this, and we'll include in there the information regarding FEMA and their view of what's going to happen in Florida. Very, very interesting stuff. As well as links to Mike's Acadian Insurance and Beyond Floods and the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. And with that, we'll now move into Q&A. And Edna, if you can moderate that, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We have had an active group today, so thank you for all your questions. So I'm going to go in order that I received them. So Jason, as I mentioned, we had a question at the beginning, how accurate is annual cost estimate, give or take 5%, 10%, et cetera?
Okay. So let me address that, and Mike, you can jump in as well. And Mike pointed this out very, very well in that comparison between the government and our private insurance carrier Beyond Floods. So underneath all of this, and I'm sure you got the feeling, is that there's really 2 different pricing systems currently in the market. The government, which is based on the flood zones and the zone determinations, and then the private side, which basically prices based on the individual property and its characteristics. And so we are very confident and very conservative in those numbers, but they're very accurate, right? So the government has their formula. So on an X zone, they view it, that's the number, that 572 that we saw is exactly the same, whether it's an X zone in South Florida or in South Dakota. One size fits all. That's the way they approach it. It's going to be the same anywhere around the country. On the private side, that pricing that we saw, which was $300, that's exactly what Beyond Floods and Nat Gen and Allstate view what the risk is for that specific property for $250,000. They stand by it. They'll insure it. It's part of their P&L. That's how they view it. So I don't know, Mike, if you want to add more to that, but that's accurate, at least from everything.
Yeah, that's our pricing is accurate based on the amount of coverage that we're asking for. Now we do estimate how much coverage is necessary. So in that first example that Jason presented, we assumed $250,000 of coverage for the building, but if I recall, it showed it was a home with only about 1,100 square feet. So it's entirely possible that it didn't need $250,000 worth of coverage. And as we get into the process, a lot of that comes out of the appraisal that the lender requires to be performed to determine how much coverage is needed for homeowners. The same thing can be used. The same appraisal can be used for flood. So it's possible, for example, in that case, that it didn't need $250,000. It might have needed 200 or some lesser amount. We would then kind of run that through the pricing model. But what we've tried to show is kind of an upper limit, of $250,000. So if there's anything that, that changes, it should be to the benefit of the purchaser of the property and the flood insurance policy.
And two additional pieces on this. So this is why these are directional, right? And that's why the disclaimer is on each and every quote. The other piece is as your real estate process dictates, right? So if you're past the assessment, now you're down to maybe property A or B and putting in a contract offer. That's when we would suggest you dust off those quotes for those two different properties and connect with Mike and his insurance folks so they can get the questions and the answers that you need so that you can look at the total cost of ownership of property A versus property B. And then once you get the contract signed, then it becomes, execution at that point. So.
All right. The next question was, is Acadian the only agent listed?
So for us to enter into the market originally, which was mid-February, we contracted with Mike to start with so that we at least had some high level of service in the market so that we could support you, the realtors. We've also heard in the first 75 days from you, the realtors, you guys want choice. And many of the places that you work for, i.e. maybe like Kai's, has an insurance side to your realty practice. So as we go forward, Mike's Acadian Insurance will also start to see additional insurance agencies as part of the options to give you, the realtor, more options and some sort of local personalization in the market. So short answer is yes, it's going to take some time. So you can expect that over the next series of months as we build that back end system out.
There was a question about the not being able to access the PDF book. So I will be sending the link and an actual PDF version of the book. So that way you can have the access to that way. Then there was a question, let's see, from Bettina. Says it. So if I put in an MSS number and go to CartoFront, I can get the same information. Let me make sure I understand that question.
Yeah, Bettina, if you don't mind going off mute so we could have a dialogue about that. I want to make sure I understand.
Hi, yeah, I have a investment property, And if I put in the investment property, it was sold on an MLS, I should be able to hit the little watermark and have it display whether the flood insurance from Beyond Floods is available in addition to, because I have it's now national, I had national flood insurance, but I'd be curious if my agent would be able to get me a quote from Beyond Floods.
So I think, so let's take it in two pieces. One is the investment property, is it commercial or is it residential?
It's residential, it's a duplex.
Duplex, okay. So you're saying you currently have national flood insurance on it and you want to make sure you can look at a private quote?
Correct.
Okay, so there's one of two ways you can go. One is if you have a preferred insurance agent, they would need to be appointed by National General to offer you their product. And that's a question that you would have for them. And if not them and you still want National General, I would encourage you to reach out to Mike in Acadian Insurance and they can help you directly.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Juan, I know that you had a question about, it says, what does flood insurance cover? What does FEMA cover? We did have a section about that, but I want to make sure that we did address your question fully. So if you'd like to take yourself off mute and let us know, or let us know in the chat, so we can make sure that your question was answered.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is, normally the building have a FEMA insurance, or some kind of insurance. Building means apartment, condos, and everything. What the difference about what FEMA will pay or the insurance will pay for the condos or something like that?
So Juan, let me ask the question and maybe Mike can answer it, but is this regarding, and maybe I missed it, but is this regarding like a homeowners association for a condo versus?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the homeowner association in the building pay flood insurance.
Okay. Mike, can you address that, please? That's a great question.
Yes, if the condo association buys what I think is called a master policy for the building or for the entire the development, and oftentimes they will require flood insurance for the unit itself, so that you know, the interior walls and the fixtures and so forth of that property are also covered for flood. You can purchase an individual policy on a by unit basis for that interior coverage from the NFIP. Beyond Floods currently does not offer coverage for interior of condo units, but the National Flood Insurance Program does.
Yeah. So two additional pieces here. One is it's given that 60% of the deals in South Florida are condo, you know, it's probably worth investigating whether beyond the homeowners or the condo association, if your purchasers need, you know, a policy for peace of mind. The second piece is, to Mike's point, the Miami Realtors have asked for us to source a private solution for condo, so that there's not just a NFIP quote, but there's a private flood insurance for condo specifically. Mike's correct. National General does not offer that at the moment. So we're seeking to find someone who does, so that you always have a choice between the government, public, you know, federal and private on both properties, single family and condo.
All right. I did address this in the chat, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows. You will be getting a email after this presentation, and the ebook, it does have everything that was included in this presentation today. So that was the next question. After that, we had a question, can my insurance broker contact Beyond Floods directly?
So certainly they can connect with Beyond Floods. They would need, again, they need an appointment. The way it works is everything's regulated by the state insurance folks. There's different levels of insurance carriers. We won't get into all the specifics of that. For a local insurance agency to represent a certain product, they need to be quote unquote appointed by that insurance carrier to represent that product. So Mike Toffoli and Acadian Insurance is appointed by National General to represent their products Beyond Floods. That's how that works. So if you talk to your local preferred insurance agent, you want to make sure that they're representing Beyond Floods in this situation.
Okay, thank you, Jason. The next question was, can the ebook be downloaded or only share the link? As I mentioned, the email that I will be sending, you can share the link and you will be having a PDF version of the ebook. So that one, it's essentially a downloaded version of it.
And I think our PDF's on the Miami Realtors landing page, right?
I believe so, but I will
Let's
check
just
to make
double
sure.
check that that's there too. So
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of people want to have it on their computer or on their tablet or their phone or whatever. It makes perfect sense.
Yep. Okay, the next question reads, a question to Mr. Mike Toffoli. Could you confirm that the two largest reassurance companies do not reassure the East Coast from the US?
Bruno, can you unmute? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yes. Could you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Normally, the insurance companies are reinsured,
Yes.
okay? And the two biggest reinsurance companies are Lloyd and Zurich.
Mhm.
I am correct?
They are, well, Lloyd's is collaboratively, yes, is probably one of the largest, and Zurich is probably one of the largest as well. So yes, they're two very large reinsurance companies.
Yes. And the information that I have, that they don't reassure the East Coast of US.
I don't think that's correct. I know of Lloyd's programs in coastal parts of South and North Carolina.
Okay.
So, and I know Zurich, I think, but what, you know, they probably don't offer a lot of coverage in coastal areas because they don't have to. There are other reinsurers who are very strong, but perhaps not as large as them. But there is reinsurance all up and down the East Coast.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize to make this question, but it's a question that I received, a confirmation that I received from somebody from Europe. And I didn't have the opportunity to, and I didn't know no one who could tell me about flood insurance. As you offer this, I think that you know better than me.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry to put you in spot. Okay.
No problem.
Yeah,
No problem.
and Bruno, you bring up a very good question. I mean, and thank you for bringing it up. South Florida, as we know, has risk, and so the appetite for reinsurance exists. Yet the challenge is it can't just all be held by one carrier, you know, one reinsurer, or even the largest. Even Lloyd's, who's a syndicate, to Mike's point, right? They syndicate out the risk. They get to their limits also, and they're like, we can't take it all. Even though if there's profit in it, they just can't take it all.
This is why climate change is very important.
Well, and you're seeing this not just in a flood, you're seeing it in homeowners, right? In your own.
Yes, yes, of course.
Right? So it's a double whammy right now.
Yes,
for your
and I
market.
think I am a realtor for 20 years,
Yes.
and I have integrity. Is a very difficult situation to be.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and we agree. That's why we are, we're excited to be in the market and offer our service. We know though it's going to get tougher before it gets better. It's just this next
Okay,
time frame,
but
this summer into next year. You know, it's going to be very expensive for Florida.
by Jason and Mike, the way that you handle me, I am 73 years old, and you have my respect. I will be glad to make business with you guys.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you, Bruno. We look forward to working with you.
And let me know if you have some change, please.
Yeah.
Will
I don't
do.
want to look around.
Yeah. I know it's, listen, we are monitoring. So I just, so for everybody's benefit, we went live in February. We've been working with Miami's association, Teresa and Liz and everybody, Deborah, for a good almost 2 years now. I came to the market for the month of March to get a firsthand view of Miami and South Florida and all the energy. I mean, what's happening in Miami is exciting, right? A lot of building, a lot of wealth, a lot of go, go, go. And yet there's a big concern about just insurance costs, getting insurance, affordability. And it's dampering a very, very hot market from a real estate perspective. So we're seeing it and we recognize it. And, you know, we want to help be a solution for you and your clients.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you.
For joining us tonight.
Thank you, Bruno. Okay, I just want to be mindful of the time. It looks like we have about 7 minutes and we have one more question. There was a question about condo units. What about condo units? The building has its own flood insurance.
Right. Mike, you want to address that?
Yeah, I think we already answered this for somebody else, but basically there is flood insurance available for the condo units that will cover the interior aspects of the unit. The building typically covers the exterior and common areas. So if you want additional coverage or if the association requires additional coverage, it is available through the National Flood Insurance Program. Beyond Floods doesn't offer it at the present time.
The other piece I want to ask Mike, and it's more of a question for you and I, but so when you take coverage, again, you talked a little bit about it for a condo, it's the interior walls and stuff. So what happens if a storm comes and there's a storm surge and like all the mechanicals get knocked out? Would the interior of a condo be covered? Like if appliances stop working or got zapped or equipment and stuff like that, or computers and stuff, what would happen there?
Not by the, if there's a building or master policy in place, that would not cover damage to that interior property. That's what you would need a separate condo policy for.
So even if you're on the 23rd floor of a condo building, you still might want to consider it, just so that if a storm comes and you have peace of mind 23 stories up.
Absolutely. And another thing that a lot of people think is counterintuitive, 23 stories up, you wouldn't expect that there would be any water damage to that property, but it's entirely possible that the flood could do so much damage to the lower floors that the building might actually be condemned and you would lose the value of what you had in your condo unit. So it's still important to think about getting coverage for a condo unit, even if it's way up in the air.
Gotcha. You know, I learn so much every time I present, because the questions like these are so valuable.
Yes, we had really good questions today. I just want to make sure that if there were any other questions. I don't see any more in the chat. looks like we have maybe 4 more minutes. So if Jason, if anybody wants to take themselves off mute.
I can sing and dance, but I don't think anybody wants that. Although Mike's a musician, so you know.
I'll sing, you dance.
Oh,
Da, 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 da.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. And that's a wrap.